Well, it's a pleasure to be here today. Give me a couple minutes to get the nerves out, and I'll get going with my presentation. As was mentioned, I used the cover crops and the strip tillage, and put a bioreactor in last year ago, and then nutrient management is another aspect of what I do, which is in relation to the Iowa nutrient reduction strategy is a very important component. The slides I'd like to show you today relate to my first full year was 2012, establishing cover crop. I began strip tillage and nutrient management, and some of the aspects of that. And then the second half of my presentation is really why I think it's very important, and what it means to water quality, what it means to just farming in general, taking care of the land and so forth. Last night I was watching TV a little bit, and I heard that the Macintosh computer is 30 years old. Just, I don't know, this week I guess, but if you had bought one back then, it was about $2,400, I guess, give or take, about a, what was it, square foot, foot by foot by foot. Now it's the size of a Wallace's Farmer magazine. You have one. Apple stock was $3 a share back then. And if you'd have taken that $2,400 and invested it in Apple stock, any idea what it's worth today? $450,000. Now in 30 years' time. Now we would all be in Arizona right now. We wouldn't be sitting in Iowa. But anyway, my point of that is, it was a tip back then, and a lot of times we hear about things and we think, well, so what? But look what it did. And in many ways, cover crops, nutrient management strategy, all these type of things, just think of what, if we'd have done that 30 years ago, where we'd be today. I guess that's my point with that. But with that, I'll get started. As I mentioned, the Boone River watershed is find this here, about right there. I'm located in north central Iowa. It's one of the, not necessarily the largest watershed in the state, but a very important one in respect to nutrient management, because a lot of the nutrient issues come out of that area. And I think back probably to the early 70s, and this is in terms of changing our ways of thinking. My dad sold the moldboard plow that we had, because at that time, erosion, wind erosion specifically, was very much a problem in north central Iowa when everybody moldboard plowed, the spring winds came, and most of you probably remember that time, it was a lot of dirt blew. And I remember the neighbor that asked, that bought the plow, he says, how are you going to farm without a plow? And of course now we think, we don't think anything about that. But what we did was, let's switch to the plow. Left more residue on the surface. We chisel plowed the corn stalks. In that time, we chisel plowed the bean stubble, which of course we don't do anymore for the most part. And this was the next step in that process, was a disc chisel. One pass, and you have to chop the stalks and have to disc. And then this is where I'm at today. Now that's quite a ways from a mobile plow. This is my planting. This is what I plant into. This is a cover crop on strip till ground. And actually this particular little spot I no-till just to try it. Now I'm going to try something here, hopefully. And this is my first step in cover crops, and that would be flying on the cover crop. There we go. No sound. I slowed it down so you can watch the materialize fall from the sky. And that's the ride falling from the sky. Early September. Late August, early September. And this is what it looks like on the ground. I'm not eating potato chips. see the rye there, a little speck, that's about a bushel an acre. And that's about all it takes. That and a half-inch rain, and then start growing. So it's pretty simple to get started. And this is the airplane applicator. This was last fall. You can look right here is where the seed comes out, and it falls into the airstream, and it spreads about a 60-foot wide swath each time it goes back and forth with the plane. He uses GPS, so when he runs out, he can fly back to the airport and come back. It took about 3 hours, 3.5 hours to seed 300 acres, so it's pretty fast. This is what it looks like. It might help. I don't know if we can dim the front light. The slides might show a little better, but this is the cereal rye in the soybean, and it's what you look for. And you kind of forget about it for a few weeks. You go out there and you see here's all this rye starting to grow up. Now, it's been a little bit difficult the last couple of years with the dryness we've had in the fall, but this past fall it was fairly dry, and I was a little bit concerned about getting it established, but went ahead and seeded it. And I went out a week or so later and started scratching around looking for the rye, and surprisingly the rye was underneath the soybean residue, and I don't know how that, some of that is the leaves are falling off, but I think when I seeded it this past fall, a lot of the leaves had already fallen off, but somehow it gets growing, gets a little moisture on it, and it puts the root out, and the root goes right down in the soil. I actually had some, the first year I seeded it, fell on some concrete near the farmstead, and we had a little rain, and that grain of cereal rye sprouted on concrete. Obviously it didn't go anywhere, but it did sprout. Another picture. You can see the corn residue from the previous year, from this was strip tilled, and the residue does not bother with the harvest or anything like that. So. And this is just the idea of the 1 bushel cereal rye per acre. I guess I look at the cereal rye as a beginner's cover crop. It's a good place to start. There's lots of things you can do afterwards, but this is my 3rd year, and my goal in 2014, next fall, is to introduce another species, perhaps radish or something like that. So this is what it looks like in the corn. Again, it's just starting up, but it grows quite well. Temperature-wise, cereal rye will grow 34 degrees and above. It doesn't take much to get it to green up in the spring, and it also stays green late in the fall. You can see the strips there. My first year with strip tillage, I did not have a very good sealing knife behind the knife, and my strips were a little bit irregular, but it still worked. So. And when you think about cover crops, it's all about the roots. It's not only what you see above ground, which protects your soil, but it's what's going down below the surface. Now this is just a handful of root mass there, but it actually probably is 3 or 4 or 5 times that when the top is 8 to 10 inches tall, the bottom is probably 2, and it can go up to 3 foot deep. The very fine roots are going down into the soil. And this is the same field, looking from the north end, looking south to my grove, and I wished I had a picture from behind me, because my neighbors obviously was brown, soybean stubble, nothing growing. This was in 2012, was probably in mid-March. 2012 was an excellent year to grow cover crops. I'm glad I could start on a good year. a little more difficult the past couple of years, but anyway, you've got something growing there an extra 3 months, 4 months of the year, a couple months in the fall, a couple months in spring, depending on when it warms up. But normally in Iowa, as been mentioned in some of the other sessions, cover crops that give you a longer green period, a less of a brown period. With corn soybean rotations, all we have is about a 90 day to 100 day period of living plants growing out in our fields. So this extra time frame with something growing out there is very beneficial to the soil health. This is a field that I just I did some I no-tilled the beans into, and here's a slide about the temperature, 34 degrees and above. It grows fast. Again, in 2012 was an excellent year. At this point, late March, it was about 7 inches tall. So it greened up from a couple inches in early March to a few weeks later. It was put a lot of growth on. And some of the benefits at 8 to 10 inches tall, we did some measurements. PFI, I think, did the NRCS folks took the samples, but we sent them down to here, down to Ames, and estimated 800 plus pounds of biomass, which isn't a tremendous amount, but it's more than what you'd have if you just had a traditional row crop. And within that 800 pounds of biomass is about 30 pounds of nitrogen that rye took up. And at that point, 50 cents a pound, that's $15 an acre, that, as we'll see later, probably would have gone down my tile line into the stream. So, again, my benefit, one of the benefits, main benefits of using cover crop is to sequester nitrogen and to keep it out of the water system. And as far as terminating the cover crop, key to remember there is 50 degrees or above. Of course, in April, early May, March, those temperatures are sometimes hard to come by. So the key to utilizing cover crops is to be ready to spray. I use glyphosate. I know some will do tillage and so forth, but that's what I use. It dies slow. This was 10 days after spraying it, and my thought was, am I going to need to, is this going to keep on growing, or do I have to spray it again, or what's going to happen? And I sent an email down to Sarah, and she put the word out and asked some other farmers that had used cereal rye, and they said give it 3 more days. And sure enough, 3 more days, it died. It was all brown. And here I am planting. This is the same position as where that photo was with all the green you saw earlier. It just kind of withered away, and I left it there, and then I planted into it. And this is going the other direction, and this is the contrast of tillage, no tillage, and a cover crop. And I really found out how important that was this past spring with the tremendous amount of rain that we received. I suffered from TMR, too much rain, as many people did. But cover crops are an excellent tool to help protect your soil when those times come. And unfortunately, if you don't have it, it's too late. When the rains fall, the damage is going to be done. The only modification I made to my planter was a floating row cleaner. All it took to be able to go through that situation. I had no problem with cleaning or anything like that. Here I actually planted some beans into that, and that was where one of those pictures was with the 8 to 10 to 12 inch tall cereal rye. Once it died, it just withers down, and it really is no problem. But the nice thing about not disturbing it once it's been terminated is that root mass is still there underneath the surface, and it really improves your soil till. For no-till people, I think it speeds up the process of if you're transitioning from tillage to no-tillage. It really improves your soil structure in a much faster pace. And there I'm planting soybeans into the strip till area. And there you can see the beans actually come up. There's really no problems with that. So the same as the case with corn. This is part of the discussion really relates to what I do for the nutrient management side of things. I delay my nitrogen application until spring or side dress time. I utilize spring nitrate test, which obviously you don't put any nitrogen on, your test's going to be low, and it basically tells you to utilize what you normally would utilize. I take tissue samples of my corn plants at B10, which is prior to silk, when you see the ears. And then also grid sample my soils on 2.5 acre grids, which I had been doing anyway, so that wasn't really anything new. And then the other aspect is taking a late season stalk nitrate test. It really tells you more where you've been, not so much where you're going. But there's a range there if your nitrate levels in your stalks, or you can tell if you put too much on, probably what it tells you the most, or not enough. But fortunately, that particular year, mine fell in the optimum range, so I was doing all right with that. And then the other thing is the water monitoring of field tile, and that corresponds to my bioreactor that I installed, part of the RCS requirements. They want to see what's going on with the bioreactor. So as a result, I was able to get my tile waters, well, one particular line, tested on a regular basis, and that was done through the Iowa Soybean Association. And then I also have a written nutrient management plan, which takes into account soil types, yield goals, fertility levels, a lot of things, but it gives you a written plan, and it really helps spell out some of the things that based on university recommendations, so forth, that and I was in the ballpark and really hadn't changed. I didn't change too much in that respect. So as far as the P&K is concerned, and this is time we take. I took the spring nitrate test. The corn is 6 to 12 inches tall, and was prior to side dressing time. And I don't know if you're familiar with this, but for row crop farmers, using nitrogen is an excellent tool to gauge where you should be with your nitrogen rates. Part of the issue with the nutrient management strategy is not allowing excess nitrogen into the system, and by utilizing the correct amounts, we're better able to manage that. But this zone right in here is really within $1 of the right rate, and the rate may vary 10 pounds an acre, but it's going to get you within $1 of the maximum turns of nitrogen. So it's a good tool to use. This slide is just a little bit bigger picture of it, but you can put more nitrogen on, you might get higher yields, but you're not necessarily going to get a better return. So there's a point of diminishing returns with nutrients. And this is when I'm applying my nitrogen, 32% right beside the row. On May 30th, this is 2012, and as you might recall, it was a very dry year. And with all that heat and all that drought we had, I got a corn crop, and I was quite thankful for that. It's just a few slides of what it looked like. After it cooled off out in the field, I went out and took some pictures. Soybean fields, you can see the corn stalks from the previous year's corn crop between the rows there. And lo and behold, I did harvest 170 bushels of dry corn an acre with 15 inches of rainfall. And from most information I've received, it takes 20 to 25 inches of rain to get an average corn crop. Now this was a little bit below average, but with the amount of rain and the heat we had, I was very, very thankful for the amount of corn I harvested. This is my strip till bar. It's just an 8-row 30 bar. It's the bar I had, and I modified it slightly. I put some row cleaners on the front, and I put these covering discs on the back. And if I want to, I pull a cart behind. I can put my P&K and apply that right in the row where the next year's corn crop is going to be. So I'm being a little more efficient with my placement and my usage of P&K. And this was 2012, and since the crop came off very early, the ground was very dry. I did not aerial seed my cereal rye in 2012. I waited till the crop was off, which was in, as you can see, it was about the middle of September, or maybe early September, and used the fertilizer spreader, a floater, basically spread the rye on the surface, and it came up quite well. Got a little rain, and it did well. And then the area between, this is my strip till zone, the path that I made. And it's what it looked like in the corn. These dark strips are where I'm going to plant my next year's crop. And this was in late November. It's a little harder to see in this picture, but the rye is still green, it's still growing, it's still going down. It's probably doing more below the surface than it is above the surface. This is my sermon slide, I guess. I've got two, one with soil, one with water. As was mentioned, my great-great-uncle bought, well, that wasn't mentioned, but he bought it in 1881, bought the farm, purchased the farm. You know, I think back 130-some years of farming this farm, and this is what it looks like now. What's it going to look like in another 25 or 50 or 130 years? You know, if we don't do what we need to do by using some of these practices that we know about today, you know, is this soil going to be as productive as it is today? And then I found a slide with the water. This is actually the tile line that I do the nitrate sampling out of, and the bioreactor is hooked up to. But in 2011, the rain stopped, probably the tile stopped flowing mid-July. And this tile hadn't flowed until from 2011 to probably March, late March of 2012, about 9 months. But from late March to early May, we received about 8 inches of rainfall. Now I'm making some assumptions here, but since the tile wasn't running prior to that time, I'm assuming some of that rain that fell from the sky just a few weeks earlier is coming through the tile line now. And I consider all that we hear about as far as nitrates in the water, how it affects other people. Now this water, I'm about 90 miles north of Des Moines, so I gave it 3 miles an hour, meandering probably to 120 miles, 150 miles, I don't know how far, but probably takes 3 or 4 days. This water from my farm in north central Iowa is flowing by Des Moines Water Works, and it's coming down the Boone River to the Des Moines River, which merges with Raccoon River, I guess, and that's where the Des Moines water system takes their water from. But what I do in north central Iowa affects what other people in the state have to deal with. And until I started with this water monitoring and actually seeing what my water had in it, for years and years and years as a farmer, I heard about the Gulf hypoxia, nitrates in the water, and I thought to myself, where is this coming from? It's got to be golf courses, it's got to be people in town that spread fertilizer on their lawns, and it goes down the sidewalk. Well, my watershed, 9 out of 10 acres is farmland. Now, it's going to take an awful lot of lawns and an awful lot of golf courses to equal the amount of acres that is in agriculture, row crop agriculture in north central Iowa. So my assumptions were wrong. The nitrate issue was not coming from urban areas. A small portion is, but the majority is coming from agricultural areas. And when I saw that, after I got, we'll see some slides in the video. There we go. These dots right in here. Yes. But you can say, you know, here's my level, and I mean, I'm still taking inlet outlet. I would assume if I had nitrate levels at 25, it would take it down to 12. You know, I think it's not because my nitrate levels are a little bit lower that it's working, but I think it will work if you have high nitrate levels. But with the nutrient management strategy, as you may have heard, it's not just one thing, it's many things. And that's what I'm trying to accomplish. Okay, but they do work, so it's This is really what we're talking about today. It came out a year ago, and I guess all I wanted to do here was just highlight, as I mentioned just a little bit ago, if you add all these things up, there's not an accumulative effect, because when you do one, there's not as much for the next one to do. But nevertheless, when you consider these things, the 41% that the goal is trying to accomplish, I think, are attainable goals. I think I found that out on my farm by changing some things I do. Some things cost some money. Some things don't cost anything. It doesn't cost anything to not put nitrogen on in the fall and put it on in the spring. That doesn't cost you. Maybe if you farm 50,000 acres, it might, but you can't get it all done at once. And here's the bioreactor. I think that shows the reduction, and this is for phosphorus. Similar goals, similar results. This was Dr. Comito. Voluntary shouldn't mean optional. We all need to participate in this. If I do it, if Seth does it, nothing's going to happen. Everybody in this room, if you're a farmer, needs to. If you own land, your tenants need to do it. It's something that, it's a goal, but yet, it's attainable. It benefits the whole state of Iowa. We all need to step up the plate. There's help out there, NRCS, Iowa State University, the Learning Farms, CDI, Nature Conservancy. I mean, there are so many groups that want to help out in this. You just about have to close your eyes and plug your ears, because, it really is accessible. And if I can do it, you can do it, because I'm nobody special. I'm just trying to do what's right. But you think about the tip I mentioned earlier, 30 years ago, Apple stock, $3 a share. I think this is kind of in the same category. I'll quit.